What is going on, Rotogrinders? This is Dean. That's Dean 7904 if you want to get all technical on me. As far as the DFS streets, we're back here once again. Week 15. We've rounded the quarter pole here as far as the season. Week 15 of the NFL Pick 6 show, where we bring on two of the best minds in all of fantasy football. Talking some early takes. Obviously, things change. We're just talking Wednesday night. If you guys are watching us, taped here on YouTube, what's up, YouTube? Feel free to like, subscribe, hit the notifications and all that. We do appreciate it. I do have my eyes as far as what's going on YouTube as well. So if you guys say anything pertinent to the conversation, maybe we'll bring it in. But yeah, again, understand if you guys are hearing this on a replay on Friday, on Saturday, some of this stuff may have expired there. This year it's been kind of goofy as far as news. So we're only talking about what we know as far as Wednesday night, 9 o'clock. Bring on my boys, usual suspects. Batting first, I'm from Sharp Football Analysis. It's Rich Hribar. What's going on, Rich?
Big Dean, what's happening? I include you as one of the sharp minds on this show too, Dean. There's more than two of us.
I appreciate that.
So, I mean, you've been hot though, Dean. You've been winning some ducats here the past couple weeks, some significant ducats. So I assume that the Christmas presents are going to be good from your way.
Yeah, I actually just bought my nephews. I just bought them a controller for the PS5. You guys have a guess how much this goes for these days in the year
probably
2020?
$70-$80.
Yeah, $70. Come on, man. Yeah, and they only give you one with the box. Like, did they assume you're just like quarantining by yourself or something? I don't know. I guess this is for another show I should complain on. But yeah, I hope.
You didn't have to buy the whole system. You only bought the controller.
That is true. Yeah, and I asked my brother about it. He's like, "Yeah, they're looking for a PS5." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not buying that." But I love my nephew, sure.
Uncle Dean. We just seen Dean. You're posting screenshots. You can afford PS5s. You better hand them out to each kid.
When screenshots backfire, man, there's a risk and a reward to it, obviously. We're talking the main slate, if y'all don't know. Of course, there's no more buys anymore, but the Thursday night game, Chargers versus Vegas, we're not talking that. Hey, we'll be talking that tomorrow night on this very stream, because I'll be talking about it with Tambo. It'll be a good time. 7 o'clock, I believe, on the East Coast, talking about some showdowns. Good times for sure. We know there's two games on Saturday, Buffalo, Denver, Carolina, Green Bay. Of course, we have content on the site as well. I'm sure you guys are pumping out content too as far as those games. Cleveland, the Giants, Sunday night, not talking about that as far as the main slate. And then Monday night, Pittsburgh, Cincy. We got an 11-gamer, Daigle. What are our thoughts as far as initial 30,000-foot screenshot? What are we thinking here as far as week 15?
Last week, as we talked about on Sunday morning, and by the way, I wish we could do that every Sunday morning, Dean, because I had my best week of the entire season. And I think it's because we bounced off our ideas off one another and sort of came to a conclusion on how to approach a busy where practically every play was good. We even talked up Marquez Valdes-Scantling as the ancillary player you wanted to get a piece of that offense of. So a really great week. I don't think it's as busy this week. A lot of lower totals. I do like some overs in these lower totals that I think aren't getting enough credit because their offenses failed just last week. But overall, 3 games we're going to talk about are the 3 games I'm most excited for, which is why I'm going to let Reeves pick them in the future as well.
Well, Reeves, you picked him this week, and it's funny because I always like to play this game in my head. I try to picture, okay, what are the 3 games that are going to be sent my way? And I always get 2 out of 3. Your thoughts? Well, we're going to talk about Houston, Indianapolis. If you guys don't know the format by now, come on, it's week 15. We'll talk about Houston, Indy, Philadelphia, and Arizona, KC, and New Orleans. Then we'll kind of branch out position by position, clean up whatever we didn't talk about in those games. If you could pick a 4th game, Hribar, what's the 4th most interesting game as far as this week?
Let's see. I don't know. Because usually, I don't always pick them because I like to pick one Phantom Rogue game. But this week I kind of reined it in and kind of went kind of chalky. Listen, there are a number of angles when we get to the position plays. Like there's a lot of one-sided, like we could talk about the Titans, we could talk about the Rams, which we will. Dallas 49ers, I think would have been really fun to talk about if we had any faith in Dallas plays, but as they showed versus Cincinnati, it's just the heart of darkness. We can't really trust them.
Bucks Falcons is interesting, even though I don't trust either side either. But
I can't talk about the Vikings or Bucks anymore. I'm just Vikings then Buccaneers out.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we'll get to Buccaneers takes because of the Ronald Jones stuff. But I am really Minnesota Vikings and Tampa Bay Buccaneered out at this stage.
My team has not been said yet, by the way. One of the games they're playing, well, I like the Chicago-Minnesota game in a dome this time of year, and I just like how concise.
I bet the over, Dean, on Monday. That's one of my favorite games.
Nice. Has it moved since? I see it at 47 currently.
I got it at 46, so it has moved.
It's only gone up a half point.
Oh man, I love Allen
I win.
Robinson. Yeah, a 7 Nation Army couldn't hold me back from rostering Allen Robinson this week. I'm all in. Well, I don't like saying all in because we speak hyperbolic, and if you say all in and you only play like 90%, as of Wednesday night, I'm a big fan of Allen Robinson, but we're not doing that position just yet. We're talking about the individual games. This is one of my least favorite games because it's got a big total, and in theory, there's some value here, but a lot of question marks as far as what's going on. I'll let you lead us off here, Hribar, as far as Houston and Indy. Indianapolis 7-point favorite, 51 total. Jonathan Taylor, another big week, another nice matchup here against Houston. Well, I guess we should start there as far as Jonathan Taylor. Still a pretty reasonable price as far as out there. We'll talk about some great running backs. Akers obviously rose. Derrick Henry's got an absolutely ridiculous matchup once again. And if you didn't have him last week, things probably went kind of poorly for you. But Houston, Indy, open that game for us, Hribar.
It's interesting because this game just 2 weeks ago was a 2-point spread, and the Texans could have theoretically won that game and at least covered at the end of that game when Deshaun Watson just dropped a fumble. And now it's 7 points, just changing venues, which is kind of a lot. It's the same exact outlook too. I mean, Will Fuller was out that game. Brandon Cooks looks like he's on track to play. Houston did lose another secondary piece in Justin Reed, so they are really starting to bleed out there defensively. But it is interesting that the spread jumped so high. It's just a good spot. I mean, the Colts are a really good offense, and their defense is starting to really be bad. I mean, in general, you look at the past 4 games that they've played. I mean, they are allowing 8.3 yards per pass attempt. They're giving up chunk plays, which they weren't doing to start the season. And, everyone to start the season really questioned, their opening schedule anyways and the quarterbacks they faced. And we're seeing some of these quarterbacks start to generate some big plays against them. Deshaun Watson threw for 340 yards, 9 yards pass attempts when these teams played 2 weeks ago with Chad Hansen and Kiki QT and Brandon Cooks, kind of in and out of the game as he got checked for, concussion. We know they're not going to run the football. They can't. Their running backs average the fewest combined yards from scrimmage per game in the NFL. There's going to be a lot of dropbacks on the Texans side. All their receivers are cheap once again with all those dropbacks because they weren't good last week. But Kiki QT's had 300-yard games in his career. They've all come against the Colts. That heavy zone defense of Matt Eberflus. And, Chad Hansen, whatever we want to say. I mean, like the dude's out here getting targets like every week, 7 targets each game. He's making contested catches. We talk about they're going to get Brandon Cooks back. I mean, there's going to be points scored in this game. I mean, I don't think the Texans are going to roll over and die. Like a lot of people have thought that their season is going to and will be as bad as they showed last week. And we can get into the other side, but the other side has been playable all year. And we finally are starting to get some clarity on this running back situation.
All right, Daigle, your thoughts. And also, I think we did a really good job last week as well as far as hitting a lot of things that went well. But one thing, at least I remember, was poo-pooing T.Y. Hilton. And boy, that hasn't been working of late. Speedster on the wrong side of 30, but he doesn't care, and he broke loose in the secondary versus Vegas, and you can argue that was a good matchup, but hey, he crushed Houston last week as well too. We like him on the turf. We like him in a dome. The price is still 5.5 on DK, so that's pretty manageable. Is T.Y. Hilton all of a sudden having a resurrection? What's going on here?
Yeah, on Sunday morning, I recall you asking me about it. And even then I said, I'm personally biased. Like I can't say yes to play T.Y. Hilton, but if someone did, I wouldn't argue about it. It's okay. And now we've seen in these last 3 games that he has at least 80 yards and a touchdown in all 3. And I don't know what's happened because PFF has charted 82% of his targets in that span as catchable. So it's also like he himself has become more open. I don't get what's happening at all. But in that time, 22% target share, team high, to Michael Pittman's 18%, and a team high in end zone targets. So the usage is there. The health is all of a sudden there. I understand we were burned for, I guess it was 12 weeks and then or 11 weeks, and now it's 3 games, and he's been magnificent. Last week, as we know, I like to play a lot of the mid to high stakes single entries. The play was just like we've talked about with Dow. One of his for the Vikings without Kirk Cousins as singularly terrific plays. Last week in most tournament winning lineups, it was Jonathan Miller and T.Y. Hilton without Phillip Rivers as singular terrific plays in a great matchup. And honestly, it's the same spot again for both. So Taylor, who we'll talk about in a second, T.Y. Hilton without Phillip Rivers, I'm all in on. And it's not because Phillip Rivers isn't playing great. He absolutely is. There's 5 straight games now where he's finished inside the top 15 in DraftKings points, but he also doesn't run the ball. And when you're talking about guys that we'll talk about, even someone on the other side of the ball like Deshaun Watson, who I believe has 5 and 6 carries in the past 2 games, that matters when you're talking about Phillip Rivers. It literally is going to take him getting the 5-point bonus over 300 yards and at least 3 touchdowns to match these rushing guys. And it's such a good matchup, and they still like to run the ball quite a bit with Taylor that I just don't think it's going to happen here.
And do we trust this is real, the separation, Taylor away from Hines and Wilkins? Is this going to sustain 20 carries last week, 20 carries 2 weeks ago as well too? In the middle, he was really good efficiently. But Hribar, is this something, he's the rookie, he's their future. You'd assume he's on the rise. This is sustained. It's a good matchup here against Houston. Can I roster Taylor with confidence, thinking he's going to get at least 20 touches?
I mean, let's never say never, but it's just because 2 weeks ago when these teams played, the Colts went for a 4th and 1 and jammed Nyheim Hines up the middle and lost 2 yards. So let's never rule out that. But I mean, Jordan Wilkins definitely looks like he's out of the picture at least. It looks like Hines is getting some like ancillary touches, but remember, Nyheim Hines like carries are like literally one of the worst plays in football. He's one of the worst efficient runners in the NFL. I've always compared him like theoretic in that regard. Like he's a good. They use him in the pass catching game really well. They get him in one-on-one situations almost all the time and take advantage of that. But as a runner, he is not very effective. He's had a couple games here where he's popped a long run, where he's had a nice cutback, but he still leads the NFL in rate of runs that fail to gain yardage. So, I mean, he's still not good. We're starting to see the big plays from Jonathan Taylor. That's what we were waiting. Like early in the season, when they gave him the job, he was getting there a little bit on volume to start the season, like the Vikings game where he had all those touches. But now he's starting to get chunk plays. We've seen it a couple weeks ago. We had the long touchdown catch and run. We saw the long touchdown last week. The opening drive of the game, he was on fire. I mean, he had 5 touches or 60 yards in the opening drive of that game last week. But then like you said, Dean, they went away from him for a few drives. And then he comes back in the second half and salts it away. It is just a tremendous matchup, though. I mean, Houston is literally the worst rushing team in terms of giving up chunk plays. They're the only team in the league that has allowed over 1,000 yards rushing on carries of 10 or more yards on the season. So, I mean, we're talking about big plays. I mean, they're available again. I don't think his price jumped enough either to really kind of push people off him in that scary zone. So, I think he's a pretty tremendous play once again.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about it as far as that carries it for Hines, and you have the Taylor shares. It's like, say it ain't so, man. What are you doing? Why are we giving the ball to Hines? I don't know. It's tilting for sure.
You got to respect him, though, is that in that game they called the 4th and 1 pass to Taylor for the touchdown, but then they went to the 4th and 1 run with Hines, and that one didn't work.
Hey, you know what? Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get from the coach there in Indianapolis. How do we run it back as far as the Houston side, John?
Like Reeves, I like the entire Houston offense. It's funny because Chad Hansen, they're literally just plopping out there and want him to be Will Fuller. He's not Will Fuller, clearly. But on 129 snaps, he's only moved to the slot for 24 of them. They're expecting him to win every single week. He has a 21% target share these last 2 games. We saw just 2 weeks ago against the Colts, he got the 5-point bonus for eclipsing 100 yards. So certainly he's a great play. A tremendous play because he was nearly, I think it was 1,300 cheaper than QT, even though everyone went to QT. Whereas we've seen that Eberflus's scheme, like Reeves mentioned, is one that QT can attack. So again, I do like going to QT in this matchup, especially and probably not, the DFS industry has gotten much smarter. The players have gotten much smarter, but it is a much better matchup to run it back with QT in this one than it is Hansen. But Hansen, again, is a tremendous play as well.
So if we think Houston is still kind of sort of somewhat thin, DK specific, Jordan Akins is 2.8K. I know it's a name people don't want to hear. He was kind of a flavor of the week last week to some people, and he dropped the ball. I think hit him on the shoulder. I think he lost it in the sun. They're going to be the dome, so theoretically, I don't think there's going to be a sun there, right? Don't they close it up? And I don't think there's light through like Minnesota and places like that or Atlanta. Jordan Akins, anybody want to run it back at 2.8K?
And Indy does, but I mean, Indy is allowing the 3rd fewest yards per target to tight ends. They don't give up a lot of production to tight ends, as we've seen even with Darren Waller last week coming off that 200-yard game. They just don't give up a lot. They're more, I don't know. It's tough to say. It's tough to really glom onto Jordan Akins, like you said. But he's cheap, I will say that. So I won't rule him out because if we're on Watson, I won't frown upon it.
Got anything else this game, Daigle, or shall I move on?
I think that's about it. Michael Pittman's salary on DK compared to T.Y. Hilton's is pretty close and similar. Having said that, right now, and I never thought I'd be here after watching that for 11 weeks, but I think Hilton's clearly the better play.
Daigle, I'm sorry. Rich, anything else as far as this game? Or are we moving on?
Oh, we look good.
All right, Philly at Arizona. We got Arizona's a 6-point favorite at home, 49 as far as the total, pretty big number. Well, I guess we start with Jalen Hurts, right? You know, I believe he hit over 100 yards last week at the 100-yard bonus.
Mm-hmm.
The over-under in Vegas, I want to say was 40 or so, which seemed kind of low. Unfortunately, I'm the wrong state to wager that, and I did get a couple. I played him, a la carte. I didn't have to pair him with anybody. I just played him by himself, and I thought it was perfectly fine. I think it's a strategy you can employ once again this week at Arizona. Well, let's start there, Hribar. You have a single game. Have you made a final decision as far as Hurts as a bust yet, or we're going to give it some time?
I mean, he's my kind of quarterback. He's literally my entire brand of fantasy. So, I mean, listen, I brought him up last week too. I thought he was like the clear cash game quarterback, but people were off the Saints matchup, which we'll talk about probably shortly too, about the Saints defense. I still think that they have some fraudulent stuff going on, but I thought that his price last week was just insane, especially for the rushing floor he was going to provide. And then he provided. He was just second quarterback in NFL history to rush for 100 yards in his first ever career start. He had 14 designed runs, which matched Cam Newton in week 1 for the most of a quarterback this season. The passing wasn't exciting, but I mean, it's still like, as long as you get something there, it's fine. He's not a complete zero there. And he's going to be, in a little bit potentially of a better spot, this week. Arizona games have run hot inside the dome. They're 4-2 towards the over in Arizona. So I think that there's some scoreboard potential here. Arizona plays man coverage at a high rate, and they blitz at the 5th highest rate. So there is going to be opportunities for Jalen Hurts to get out the gate here and use his legs. If you just get something out of the rushing department, if you can push 200 yards, you can get 2 passing touchdowns, you're going to be in a really good spot. He's another guy. I don't think the pricing went up enough. But most importantly for him in this offense is that he didn't take a sack. No negative plays. He lost the fumble, but there's no negative plays. They don't kill themselves. They're able to score 27 points because this is a team that was averaging 6 sacks plus turnovers per game, the most in the NFL. He's not sacked. It's the first time that they didn't take a sack since week 2. They were leading the league over that span in sacks taken. He's able to get out his own way, keep the offense ahead of schedule. The best thing, like you said, is that you don't have to pair him with anybody because you don't have to trust him. And then Arizona, look at the mobile quarterbacks they faced. Russell Wilson, 84 yards, 42 yards rushing. Cam Newton, 46 yards. Josh Allen, 38 yards. Tua had 35 yards. Bridgewater had 32 yards and a touchdown. Every single one of those mobile quarterbacks they faced outside of Cam Newton had a 20-point fantasy game or higher against them. I think it's a good spot for them. I think they're going to have to match points. I think the Battle of the Birds is going to have some points on the board.
Yeah, what do you have to add here, John, as far as this Philadelphia offense? He basically said it all as far as Hurts. I think he's very much in play, and depending on how much money you have to play with this week as far as injuries and value, how that opens up throughout the week, for sure, I'm interested in Hurts, and I think he's fine as a cash play if I love everything else, and we'll be loading up on some big spends we'll talk about later. Is there anybody else you can sell me? I mean, of course, Sanders can break another 80-yard touchdown off. You can't really rely on that. As receivers, I don't trust any of them, but I don't think you necessarily need any. Probably not going to get the 300-yard bonus, but a decent shot. Well, at least a shot at the 100-yard bonus as far as the legs. Is there anybody else on Philly that's worth talking about?
It's like you mentioned, Dean, with the total in this game. I just like the entire game environment. The total is too low. Like, I believe it's still 47. And if Philly's still banged up on defense, if we have 2 healthy rushing quarterbacks, which is, as we'll talk about in a second, which we saw from Kyler last week, like, both of these offenses are poised to explode here. Miles Sanders is interesting, if only because significantly out-snapped Boston Scott last week, 56-15. And then also the Hurts addition helped him. Just that 82-yard run, touch for a touchdown, the RPO, just to like leave fake hand or show the handoff. Linebackers follow Hurts side because they ain't scared of Wentz. They're not following Wentz if he's under center. They have to follow Hurts. And then all of a sudden, Sanders is such an explosive playmaker. He needs to break one tackle. That's it. And he's to the house. Like, that's why Sanders was better. And Peterson finally trusted him, finally gave, as Reeves said, Hurts design carries. So the offensive playmaking and ideal just changed last week. So that's why I just like this total as a whole. And Sanders, Hurts, the passing game's unique in that Jalen Reagor, of course, he was getting those prayer yards we always talk about. Only 50% of his targets were deemed as catchable on PFF, whereas Goddard led the team with a 23% target share. But yeah, at 5,900 on DK, like, Hurts naked is just fine. I mean, it's literally only 800 more than last week. It's not much at all, considering he was the second quarterback ever since 1950 to have to run for 18 carries. Like, Lamar's debut had 26 carries. So it's just a unique player in a unique position.
He's a better passer than Lamar. His passing acumen out of college was a lot better than Lamar's was. And, a lot of people point to Lincoln Riley, but his yards per attempt rose every year of his collegiate career. He got better as a passer. And, he's pushing like 85th percentile on a lot of passing metrics. And those are just metrics. Obviously, we know he has flaws as a passer, but it's not a situation like Lamar. Like, this guy's a better thrower of the football than Lamar Jackson is.
John, you referenced both the quarterbacks in this game being running quarterbacks. We see Kyler Murray. He only had 5 carries for 3 straight games. Last week, he moved a little bit more. There's some speculation as far as him nursing an injury, his shoulder. 13 carries. He didn't necessarily get loose, but at least he was running. The longest carry, I believe, was a 12-yarder. Kyler Murray was he never healthy? Is he recovered? Do we care? Is he just worth tournament darts at this price in the dome?
I mean, if we're assuming this total goes over, he's clearly worth tournament plays. I don't know what's happened. We talked about on this show even whether he was injured, whether it was the defense, as he got frustrated with media and even said, "What do y'all want me to do? Like, I have to keep handing it off because they're spying on me every time." But we saw last week, no matter what was the case 3 weeks for these 3 week span, he had his second most carries in a single game this year, 13 carries. And that was not so coincidentally the one game in this 3 week stretch, the past 3 games, that he was not on the injury report at all. So whatever happened, he's back to running. And we saw the fallout, the typical 34% target share to DeAndre Hopkins, the typical 1 target to Kenyon Drake, which is what he averaged before that 3-game stretch. And then, of course, no one else getting involved as Andy Isabella was healthy scratched, and Dan Arnold got his 1 peppering of touchdown per game all of a sudden that comes out of nowhere. So the offense was pretty much predictable, which is also what I love about this game, because if everything stays the same, this is just your normal Kyler run offense.
All right. Sell me on that Arizona side. What do you have for me, Rich, as far as where are we prioritizing Hopkins? Where are we prioritizing pairing him with Murray as far as the slate as a whole?
I mean, so you look at last weekend's game, the Eagles had Rodney McLeod drop with an ACL injury. They had Avonte Maddox leave the game with a knee injury. Both of those players are already out this week. McLeod's obviously out the rest of the season. Darius Slay left the game with a concussion. The second time he has now been in concussion protocol. If they're out, those 3 defenders at the back end, I mean, it's going to be like just, completely wheels up for DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, there's going to be there's a team that likes to play man coverage. They're not going to have the bodies to play man coverage, especially not against DeAndre Hopkins. Like, they could have thrown Darius Slay out there and just taken the results like they did with DK Metcalf. I mean, he's going to eat on these other guys up alive. Like, it's just not going to be a probable, defensive scheme for them, which opens everything else up, and alters their approach. So, I mean, if those 3 guys are going to be out, or we're really just looking at Slay now because the other 2 are already out, I mean, it's completely a spot where he'll probably be undervalued, especially when you look at just the context of the slate, of wanting to get, Tyreek Hill and some of these other pieces in here, as we want to pay for some of these running backs like Derrick Henry, who is really expensive again for a good reason, and some of these guys we want to play. And there are some cheapies we could play, which we'll touch on too. But yeah, I mean, it's really easy though. I mean, it's really just him. I mean, we're not excited about anyone else. We can talk ourselves because of the injuries and taking a shot on Christian Kirk, but it's just a dart at this point. I mean, Christian Kirk has 7 catches for 35 yards the past 3 weeks. He's had 37 yards or fewer in 5 of his past 7 games. Like, you're really just hoping to hit a big play. That's all you're doing. It's literally a blind dart, and that's okay if you get there in a blind dart. I mean, that's fine. I'm just saying, objectively, there's no good reason to play him outside of saying, well, the Eagles are hurt and we're on this game. His own play isn't going to get us to click the button.
I think that's the most frustrating part about the slate too, is that last week we had those high totals, all these spots we like, that we also didn't trust the ancillary options, but we at least had confidence they get usage. And if they did their part, they would have hit in high totals. Even like your Bob Tunyons, who was in winning lineups as well. Like, those guys were confident. Like, I don't have faith in Emmanuel Sanders, who we'll talk about in a second. I don't have faith in Christian Kirk. So it's just like, it's hard to find for me. Maybe Rich has some at the end of the show, but like, it's hard for me to find the cheapy positive options here in this slate.
Yeah, when you look at this too, I mean, so Kyler of his 13 carries, 8 were scrambles, which we look at too. Because if the Eagles are going to play man coverage, which I doubt that they will if they're missing Darius Slay, but that's when you get the rushing component. And this team has really struggled against the RPO this season. Daniel Jones, obviously the infamous, long play where he fell down on Thursday night was an RPO. He also had a 30-yard touchdown run on a RPO for a touchdown. He also had 64 yards in that second game rushing. And Lamar Jackson had 108 yards against them with a 50-yard touchdown on an RPO. So, I mean, the Eagles have not defended it well. And then they did give up 30 plus yards to Taysom Hill last week too. But those injuries, Taysom Hill was shredding them through the air at the end of that game when they lost all those guys. The Saints ran out of possessions and they almost got one back. That was a hell of an onside kick.
That was pretty awesome. Yeah, we're going to talk about Taysom in just a second. Before we do that, we want to mention here at RG Premium, we're now offering subscribers the option to select specific sports for their premium subscriptions, or to select a combination platter, the combo premium, which basically includes every single sport with the exception of NASCAR. Viewers can use, you guys are out there on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe. Do you want to mention that more than once? It doesn't cost you anything. It keeps the lights on. Let's just keep pumping out the free content. Like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, do all that. We much appreciate it. The promo code is going to be dropped there in chat for you guys in just a second. Fabulous multitasking producer Devin's all over it. Dropping the link for you guys in just a second. You get $10 off your first month of either the combo or the single a la carte sport RJ Premium. And again, the combo includes everything: college football, MMA, NFL, soccer, esports, much more than that. Everything essentially but NASCAR. All right, the last game. This is going to be a lot of fun. It should be a lot of fun. I assume Drew Brees is not going to give it a go once again. We are recording this on Wednesday night, but as of right now, it seems like it's going to be Taysom season, at least for one more week. Kansas City at New Orleans. It's high and it's tight, 51.5 as far as the total. New Orleans getting 3 points as a home dog. All right, Hribar, Taysom and Mahomes. This should be a fun matchup, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, does Vegas think Drew Brees is playing? I mean,
this number.
Someone else bet the Chiefs, by the way, earlier this week. I can tell.
This line is very puzzling to me if Taysom is the starter. Yep. Not that I don't think that the Saints can hang and score points, but it feels like Mahomes versus Taysom Hill should be worth a few more ducats here. And it did open at 3.5 and got bet down, but I wonder if there is, like, some people have some kind of information that Drew Brees might try to play if he can. I mean, he is one of those guys that, like, if he says he's healthy, like, they might just play him, but
how many points is 47-year-old Drew Brees worth in 2020?
I mean, more than Taysom Hill, right? Like, I guess they have to score in the 30s in this game. You have to score in 30s, right, to win this game.
Probably.
Like, you just inherently know, like, I've got to get the 30 against the Chiefs, and you still might not win with 30, but you got to get in the 30s. And this is a team that, since they've switched to Taysom Hill, they're not scoring at the same rate. They've scored on 34% of their possessions with Taysom Hill. That's 22nd in the league. They're scoring at 53% of their possessions with Drew Brees. I understand that was 3rd in the league. So, I mean, they're not scoring at the same rate. They're not having as many, drives result in scores that they were. So you're going to have to pace them and get points. Taysom Hill's still getting there. If we get to Taysom Hill and there's, nothing pops up, at the end of this week, he's, last week was a positive for him. I mean, he still was a top 12 QB. He had the 19 fantasy points, and only 17.4% of his points came via rushing, which is by far his lowest of his starts. The lowest previously was 35%. So for him to get there largely on passing was a big pro in his corner to show you at least that he can get there. I do think he will rush for more yards if he does start in this game. The Chiefs are 27th in rushing points allowed per game to opposing quarterbacks. So they have been run on by the mobile quarterbacks that they faced as well. I think the Saints side is really interesting here because if Taysom Hill starts, it's really easy for us. Michael Thomas has 37 targets from Taysom Hill. The next closest Saint has 17. Then we've got this situation where Kamara is probably underpriced. Because imagine if Drew Brees was playing in this game, we'd be all over him, right? Like Kamara in this spot. As a home game on the turf, the Chiefs don't care about stopping the run. Well, listen, Kamara got the 10 targets. He scored a touchdown in 3 of the 4 games Taysom Hill started. His snaps are back up. Everything's back to kind of normal for him. I don't know if it's because Latavius got hurt. Was it a weird thing with his toe? We don't really know, but he had 10 targets. They showed that he is capable and to be part of the game plan. And you want to incorporate running backs as part of your game plan against the Chiefs via the pass and run because they don't care about stopping either, and their linebackers are not good in pass coverage. So I think Calvin Kamara is a really interesting run back because no one really wants to touch this guy right now. But he's been productive though the last 2 weeks.
Take this for whatever it's worth. Maybe it's worth nothing, but I will say before the game last week, like on Friday, my old roommate, Evan Silva, speaks directly with Nick Underhill, a terrific reporter who has his own business. Everyone go check it out, where he does reporting on the Saints. And Silva told me that this is a game where they're going to make a concerted effort to get Kamara involved. And we saw 10 targets, a 4-game high with Taysom Hill. And I've already heard this week, again, whatever it's worth, I've heard that it's another game where they're trying to feature Kamara. So we can do whatever we want with that information, but it sounds like, and we know that, right? It's the Chiefs. Like Taysom Hill has no choice but to get Kamara involved because that's the way they're going to match the Chiefs point for point because they're not going to stop him here. And if it's negative game script and Taysom has the ball in his hand more, that's okay for us too in fantasy because he's going to run the ball more too. So I think, of course, I like the Chiefs side or the Saints side. And as Rich said, if it is Taysom, in fact, on Sunday, which it sounds like it's going to be, then that means that we know exactly where the ball is going to go.
My only question is that an anomaly? I mean, obviously, ideally, in a perfect world, you want to get the ball to Kamara, and he had 10 targets. But previous to that, he had 3, he had 2, he had 1. Now, some goofy stuff happened. Of course, that game in Denver, they didn't really need a functional offense to beat Denver. Obviously, they just ran the ball into the ground. And they had some leads as well, too. But I just don't know if 10's the ceiling as far as his targets, and 3. I don't think 3 or 2 or 1 is realistic. Maybe somewhere in the middle. Just kind of a sort of a thought process there. But of course, if Breeze is back for whatever reason, Kamara more likely to get the ball, and now Taysom's just taking it himself, getting his 7-yard chunks as opposed to throwing the ball to Kamara. Thomas, for what it's worth, is I think he's not practicing or he's limited this week. But again, Wednesday night. You guys ever read on that right now, or
he's limited every Wednesday. Don't worry about it.
Okay. All right. That's what I thought. Kansas City, pretty clear what's going on there. Mahomes, if you can get Mahomes, by all means, play Mahomes. He's absolutely amazing. I don't care what defense it is. And people are, Miami's got a good defense. Sure. Have they faced Mahomes yet? The same thing with New Orleans. New Orleans does have a good defense too. And I guess, Rich, you want to poke some holes in them. You talked about as far as Hurts last week, kind of chewing them up. We want to play Mahomes. We want to pair him with Kelsey. We want to get some Hill. It's that obvious. It's just a matter of opportunity cost and how you can make it work from a salary perspective. Tell everybody they're not aware how good Kansas City is.
I mean, listen, Kansas City is pretty good. You guys know, right? But this matchup's interesting for a number of levels because no one plays man defense more than the Saints, and we saw it happen when the Bucs tried to play some man defense a couple weeks ago against this defense. I mean, you can't do it. I mean, we've got Tyreek Hill on turf in a dome, which we don't really often get with this Chiefs team. The Chiefs should actually, with Mahomes, they should just build a dome, like just sacrifice it. Like the city should be like, you know what? Yeah, because what's going to happen to the Chiefs one year is they're going to get deep in the playoffs and we're going to get like 3 feet of snow in Kansas City and they're going to be like, damn it, like Tyreek Hill's run, he doesn't have the snow tires on. It's all ruined because this team is made to be played. Like this is an indoors team they built. And we don't get to see them hardly ever play indoors. This is technically Mahomes' 4th dome start, but 2 of them are kind of sketchy. It's counted as like the Raiders game this year and the Chargers game, although both kind of have open air elements to the stadium. But we're getting Tyreek on a fast track. Tyreek has 16 touchdowns this year. Yeah. Like, does anyone even notice that? Like, the dude has 16 touchdowns, like, which is
a
pretty
couple
bonkers.
called back. Several called back.
Well, listen, he's one that we can complain about being called back. That's it. That's all we'll allow. But do you look at the Saints defense? They play man coverage, the highest rate in the league, which is going to be a problem if you want to do this against the Chiefs. But look at this run that the Saints have been on defensively. Look at the passers they faced since their week 6 bye. Teddy Bridgewater, Nick Foles, Tom Brady. We'll give him some credit there. Nick Mullins, Matt Ryan ×2, Kendall Hinton, not a quarterback, and Jalen Hurts. Those are the quarterbacks they faced their week 6 bye. Like, there's nobody even in the stratosphere of weight class as Patrick Mahomes on that resume. Patrick Mahomes has thrown for 300 or more yards in 6 straight games. He's thrown for 400 more yards in 2 of those, 393 in another. They've just said, screw it. They don't care about running the ball anymore. Like, they are locked in on throwing the ball. And what's different about this Chiefs team than the years past, or even, the year he threw the 50 touchdowns, is like, it's really just going to 2 guys this time. It's like, we're not having these random DeMarcus Robinson games, these random Sammy Watkins games, these random McCole Hardman games. It's really just been Tyreek and Kelsey just banging all of this production, which has been unique for this, offense in the recent years. But those guys are just soaking up and producing at such a high level. So it's an interesting game on a lot of levels, but I definitely think this Chiefs line, something's up with this, man.
It's weird.
3 points.
Does KC have it locked in the East? I'm sorry, in the AFC? Is that, I'm thinking basketball at the East.
The 1 seed? No, absolutely not.
No.
Yeah. Pittsburgh is only 2 losses, I believe. So, yeah. But Kansas City, if you watch them, they seem like they're just bored. They're doing like double reverses on the 1 yard line, just anything to entertain themselves throughout the regular season. Stuff,
man. We're talking about practice.
My favorite effort has been Travis Kelce taking a snap and then doing the Patrick Mahomes underhand throw. It failed, but they're just trying shit, man. They're just throwing stuff against the wall. Yeah. If it works, we'll take it to the playoffs. If not, we'll throw it at the playbook because they know that where they're going. It's no big deal.
To be fair, their running game sucks.
Their running game sucks bad.
We were saying the same thing. You said the running game sucks. I was asking if CEH is a Ponzi scheme. He's 5.8K, but you said, hey, they figured out that throwing the ball, especially when your quarterback is Patrick Mahomes, is more efficient. If the analytics say you probably should throw it as opposed to give the ball to, CEH. But he is, I think, the cheapest price he's been all season long at 5.8K. He is in a dome. He is still getting 20 touches, 20 opportunities. At least that's what he got last week. There's a possibility. There's a ceiling. But it sounds like you're not in, Rich. What about you, John? Can you sell me any interest on CEH or not so much?
Well, that's the thing. That's what he got last week. And, of course, before then with Le'Veon Bell, it was hard for him to even surpass double-digit touches. He had 15 and 12 in 2 weeks before. But now we're talking about a matchup that, to steal Reeb stats, remember, like, Smosh Perine stuck around in the record book since 2017. Like, he was the only runner to eclipse 100 yards against this team. And then we had 2 guys do it last week with Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders. Of course, they didn't have any film on Jalen Hurts. They didn't know what to expect. So I just go back to this matchup with their front sevens, incredibly tough. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, of course, had 21 of 25 backfield touches. He played a season high in snaps. This is all tremendous, but again, I think it's going to be a incredibly tough matchup for a team that has thrown the ball at the second highest rate, both in neutral game script and with the lead the past 6 weeks, only behind the Steelers, who, funny enough, have like a completely different offense. They don't even care about throwing deep. They're just dumping off as quick as they effing can. But yeah, I mean, I just think we know where the ball's going. Mahomes is going to launch it. It's going to go Tyreek and Travis Kelce. To a lesser extent, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to get a few inefficient runs here and there. But even inside the red zone, this is Mahomes' team. So yeah, it's pretty clear what happens.
All right. We only have to go back 2 weeks ago. It's a very similar matchup. They faced the Bucs, a great run defense, a heavy man coverage team, and they totally did not try to run the ball at all. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 12 touches in that game for 39 yards. I mean, I don't think he's going to be a featured part of the game plan. Now, I will never tell anyone that they can't play a Kansas City Chief as a tournament option. Like, I'll never tell you anyone, you can't play anyone tournaments. Play who you want to play, as Blendy says. I mean, absolutely. How funny is it though that Miles Sanders now has 3 70+ yard runs, and they've come against the Saints, the Ravens when they were good and non-COVID free, and the Steelers.
Unreal.
The 3 games, like, no one really wanted to have any excitement to play him, and that's when he's ripped off his big splash plays.
You're starting a DFS lineup this week, and they're both the most expensive of their position. Kelsey, the most expensive, had him by 2.5K. Next up is Andrews, And, we talked about how Hill has been absolutely amazing this year. 8.8K, most expensive receiver. John, could you take a stand? If you can only make one lineup and you're not going to double stack theoretically, you can only play Hill or Kelsey. Which one makes the most sense right now to start with? They're both obviously great options.
Oh, why do you do this to me? So we talked about last week how so we had two conversations. Wednesday, as Reeves pointed out, you just win when you roster, if you can afford it, Kelsey at tight end, because he just wins over the position every single week. Doesn't even matter what everyone else tries to do. Kelsey's the winner. And then we talked on Sunday, the optimal build became, or not optimal, but popular, became DeAndre Washington, and thus everyone that was then going to be able to afford Travis Kelsey. And like we talked about, I said, I don't like DeAndre Washington tournaments because it's the same method everyone will do. You convinced me pretty much that, hey, we should then leverage Tua, who, as we talked about the stats in no huddle rate the second half. Oh, what if he throws a season high in passes again? This is great. And then I double stack Tyreek and Kelsey. So I still think it's optimal to do both without Mahomes. Picking one, though, I guess it would still be Kelsey because he just wins the position while everyone else tries to get these Irv Smiths, who, don't get me wrong, Irv Smith was great last week, but Irv Smith is still barely running routes. This dude is spiking 3 touchdowns on 24, 23 routes the past 2 games he's played without Kyle Rudolph. So it's still a very shaky position to try to get one of these cheap guys over Kelsey, who's going to dominate the slate.
Yeah, the Tua thing was my best lineup last week. Not that, when I go over it, whatever. We're forward-thinking show, right? My best lineup, though, had Parker with Tua, and I couldn't believe a few people. I don't like to be the guy. I can't believe this guy was only 1% owned, but I think it was 1% owned, the single entry stuff, Tua, and I had plenty of Gesicki,
He was, yeah. I was in there with you. He was. Honestly, again, forward thinking, but I was a 1v1 Aaron Jones and Travis Kelsey with Gesicki in the tight end position. And I couldn't break my brain to flex a tight end, even though we know Kelsey's not a tight end. He's a wide receiver. He has the 5th most fantasy points among wide receivers, I believe, 6th most. Reeves is better at that stat than me. But either way, Kelsey's not of this world. So it doesn't make sense that I qualified him as a tight end. That's the play. I think that's the play again this week.
Reeves?
Well, there's a lot of game theory in play here, and ownership will play out in the end of the week. So you just need to know how popular Kelsey's going to be because the position he plays. But just Kelsey in general, he leads the NFL in receiving yardage right now. He's had 500-yard games in his past 6. He has 6 straight games with 8 or more catches. It's only been done 7 other times in NFL history, and none of them were tight ends that did it. He's getting a ton of catches. He's getting a ton of yards. Now, the question comes to be, do we get to a point where everyone's just screw it, I have to have Kelsey? Because Kelsey's the one thing, if he bricks in a tournament at 35% ownership or say 30%, you're not going to be hurt as much as Tyreek. Paying up for Tyreek and him bricking hurts you a lot more than a tight paying 8K for a tight end and having him brick. There's going to be a little bit of game theory to play and see in the week, how it plays out and what it's looking like Kelsey's ownership's going to be, because you would want to play him. But if it just turns out to where everyone just wants to play him, obviously it's a spot where if he does flame, which he hasn't, no one else is doing anything at the tight end position, so it's going to hurt you. A wide receiver, some guys are going to drop some big numbers still. If Tyreek flames, there's going to be big wide receiver performances. So we're going to have to wait and see what the ownership's going to be like. Obviously, you'd like to play Kelsey. Like I said, the Tyreek and man coverage, though, can a team be so foolish after seeing what happened to Carlton Davis to come do this again? And
you speak of 2 weeks ago as well, that's the last time Kelsey busted. Gronk in that same game had 100 yards and got the bonus, whereas Kelsey had 8 for 82. That's his busting, right? But Gronk surpassed him. So yeah, sure. It makes sense.
I was just going to say, Kelsey can very realistically go 8 for 80. And, that's a bust, unfortunately. No touchdowns. That's just a bust. That's just what it is. Is there, either you're going to say this, Rich, is there anything too, I've heard people talking about, do his teammates care about getting him the most yards amongst any receiving person in the league? Isn't he right there? And I heard that bandied about, and does Mahomes care? Do his teammates care? They want to get him the most possible yards amongst anybody in the league, for the season, or is that just a nothing thing, narrative street?
There's probably some partial truth to that. I would think that it means something to Kelsey be the first tight end to do that. But I also think that this team's going to, try to optimally win games too. Now, it just so happens that those two things have some symmetry right now. It's lining up and it's working out that way. Obviously, I think it's a pretty good matchup too for him. The Saints, right, he's a good matchup against everyone, really. But, if they're, like I said, if they're going to play a lot of man coverage, I mean, Kelsey's going to win. Like, it's going to be interesting to see if the Saints alter their defensive approach here against this Chiefs, defense.
What does your gut say?
A lot of teams have altered their approach against the Chiefs. The Bucs were the only one who Todd Bowles said, at hell or high water, I'm going to call my game plan. And, a lot of teams have just been running a lot of too high. Dan Pizzuta on my site, and it's a free article. You can check it out on the site at sharper1ounce.com. Talked about how teams have defended the Chiefs compared to how they defend everybody else, and has like all the season splits to check that out. So, a lot of teams have altered their approach. So, I would say, if I was a coach, I'd alter, wouldn't you? Aren't you supposed to? Isn't that what coaching is supposed to be? Like, you're not supposed to just do the same stuff every game. Like, you're supposed to come out here and call your game based on your personnel. So let's see what happens. But you seen even last week, the Dolphins did it, and the Tyreek still gets you over the top on one. Like, it just takes one play with these guys. And you're not going to have 2 tip-top interceptions probably again in this game. So I don't know.
But you can already that stuff is good though. I'm happy to roster a quarterback that throws it like a pick 6 right away. Now let's let him chase. I'll lose the 1 point. I'll lay the 1 point to all of a sudden get my quarterback throwing. Not that Mahomes is not going to throw, but you know what I mean.
The only thing I know about milestone talk is that there is none greater than Will Grier jamming injured Christian McCaffrey like 20 targets in the first 2 quarters of last year's Week 17 game against the Saints. Still the best moment.
Yeah, these come more into play on Week 17, Week 16, obviously, but we'll stay tuned on that. Week 17 is a good information slate. We're going to talk about our favorite plays at every position that we haven't talked about as far as our game specifically. Before we do that, we do want to mention, if you're looking for the ultimate stocking stuffers for this holiday season, look no further, because our sponsor, Manscaped, they have the tools to make you win this year's stocking stuffer or white elephant competition. Manscaped. It's the only brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming and hygiene products. Great news. They also are releasing their products across Europe, Canada, and Australia. We're huge in Australia, by the way. Thank you. Thank you for the support, Australia. Much appreciated. A few of their products that are prime stocking stuffers for the season, they are as follows. The Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant. That just speaks for itself. No need to explain that. No need to get into it. Yeah, you know what it is. The Crop Reliever Ball Toner. That's a spray-on toner that will give your balls a little slice of heaven with their aloe vera and hazel extracts. The Crop Cleanser Body Wash. It's a full body wash. If you're feeling frisky, you can put it in your hair as well. Crop Mop Ball Wipes. You never know. You never know when an opportunity strikes, so you should always be prepared. The Foot Duster Foot Deodorant. It's designed to keep the stankiest of feet smelling fresh. Shears 2.0 is a luxury 4-piece nail kit. The Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer, which provides proprietary skin-safe technology to get rid of those nasty nose hairs. Let's not forget, this is the creme de la creme, the best trimmer for your butt, your balls, your body, all 3 Bs. That's the Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer. It offers a replaceable ceramic blade with advanced skin-safe technology, which helps reduce grooming accidents. Let's reduce those as much as possible. You do not want a grooming accident. These formulations are vegan, cruelty-free, dye-free, sulfate-free, and paraben-free, so you know their products are legit. How do I go about getting myself some Manscaped? I'm glad you asked. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code ROTO. That's ROTO at manscaped.com. Manscaped, thank you for making your holes look sexy. One more time, 20% off, free shipping. Use the promo code ROTO, ROTO at manscaped.com. Seamless segue as far as our favorite quarterbacks this week. Hribar, who have we not talked about that's popping for you?
Yo, Devin better have put me on that front screen eating popcorn as a bit, because I haven't eaten that in like 3 years. So just for the show. Thank you.
Did you enjoy that? Did I sell you? We got the promo code.
Pretty good. I know that. Manscaped and popcorn are both good. I can attest.
Fair enough.
That one had less Christmas puns than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Given their MO.
There's balls right there, and they barely anything.
Ornaments. There's a lot of action that we could have here.
I just took a drink really quick and I found a popcorn piece in there. So that tells you how the bit went.
The chat there on YouTube's having a good time as well. I don't recall who did I throw it to? Hribar, I believe. But what quarterback?
Sure. Listen, Lamar Jackson. That guy's running around again too. We're talking. Speaking of quarterbacks that are running again, 94 yards, 124 yards. They've got to win. They've got no wide receivers. Although I would love to see Des Bryant score another NFL touchdown in his career. No Marquise Brown, which will be a good. Maybe Mandrews is the leverage this week. Maybe
I think he might play Brown. For the things I saw before, like right before he went on air. There's different. Who knows?
Well, he didn't test positive.
Yeah.
Then he still can get clear before the game.
Also,
as long
Mark
as
Andrews can still be the leverage if Marquise Brown plays. We're not worried about Marquise Brown. Not playing Marquise Brown.
Right. But listen, Lamar Jackson though also could play. Regardless, listen, we've talked about this Jaguars defense now for a few weeks, like the amount of injuries they've had, and they just can't stop anybody right now. It was a bummer because it was like, Glennon was so bad the first half of that game really couldn't pop, and it let the Titans turtle with that 31-10 lead. Early on, and then Tannehill only threw 23 passes, I believe, or 24 passes. And man, Glennon was awful in that game, and got benched finally. So we'll have Minshew at least back, who's at least been serviceable. He kind of always gets there for fantasy too. But the Jaguars can't stop anybody. Lamar's gonna have a field day. They're 31st in passing points allowed per attempt when he does decide to throw his 12 to 15 times. They've allowed multiple passing touchdowns over the past 7 games when he does decide to throw, and he's been running. And then the only other guy I'll bring up is a guy I don't really want to play because I never like playing him, is Jared Goff, just by the default of, listen, man, the Jets are allowing the most passing points per game. Quarterbacks have been literally the most efficient passers against the Jets, league high completion rate. They have allowed the tied for the most passing touchdowns allowed in the league. They're kind of a bit of a pass funnel as well, because they are moderately successful against the run. Actually, they are not even moderately successful. They're good against the run in totality. But we know the Rams are going to run because it's what the Rams do. And my worry is like Goff is just like going to have to, I don't know if Goff has in him to be like Russ, where he only throws for 200 yards, but has 4 touchdowns. I feel like all Goff's like huge touchdown games come attached to like games where he throws a lot in general. And that's my one worry. But literally this spot has not let us down, this spot against the Jets, man, in quite some time.
Yeah, John, that's the thing. Feel free to touch on Lamar versus Jacksonville, Goff versus the Jets. These are the matchups. This could be heaven or this could be hell, depending on what the scoreboard says and how they get those first 4 touchdowns. And you put the brakes on in the second half. Like if we think that's how the game script's going to go, it can be super tilting. And then there's Russ, who's got, not a big team total for Seattle. I think I want to say at the lowest one they've had all season long there, against Washington. Chase Young is just an absolute monster. That guy is like a one-man wrecking crew on defense. He's been incredible. And Wilson will take some sacks on occasion. Certainly you can play him in tournaments, but that's not really popping for me as far as this slate. John, any thoughts as far as Lamar, Goff, Wilson, anybody else to throw out there? Because a lot of the good options, I can't play Aaron Rodgers in the main slate. I don't know. He's a greedy Gus. He will do everything possible to get his touchdowns. So I can't roster him. So I'm a little bit confused. Of course, I want the money for Mahomes. If I don't have that secondary piece, we talk about, Hurts. Anybody else that's kind of sort of popping from a quarterback perspective, or I think it feels kind of thin this week.
Not so much thin because we talked about a lot of the options I like. It's just a matter of that we already talked about them. Like even a guy who I think is in a good matchup like Mitchell Trubisky, the knocks outside of just being Mitchell Trubisky are clearly there. 34 attempts the past 2 games, no more than 34 attempts the past 2 games, even though he succeeded in those matchups. Also, David Montgomery could easily poach touchdowns from him, which is what we've seen one time in the last 3 weeks as well. Not to mention that at 5,500 on DK, Hurst at 5,900, Taysom's at 6K. Just much better game environments overall. So outside of Lamar, I think we actually covered everything. Russ will not be in my player pool this week. I thought it was questionable last week, but he still got there. The issue is he didn't get there because he didn't get the bonus. We're trying to get the bonus on DK, remember. And when you're benched with 2 minutes left in the third quarter, not the fourth quarter, in the third quarter, that means you ain't getting there because the Jets just didn't fight back whatsoever. Also, we talked about Dean being skeptical about the Jets guys because everyone was there. We needed to find pivots off of those guys. So, yeah, I'm not really on Russ. If right tackle Brandon Shell is out again, that's how the Giants dominated the Seahawks. They literally just attacked one man, and they got there every time. What do you think Washington's going to do? They're blitzkrieging him. They're coming at him every time. So I don't have Russ in my player pool.
Any other quarterbacks that are worth benching or shall I move with the running backs?
Roll it.
Running backs it is. Man, Houston, we have a problem. We got a runaway train coming. I don't care what month it is. Doesn't matter to me. King of the world is coming. Derrick Henry. If you choose to fade yourself some Derrick Henry this week, may the force be with you, man. Good luck. Of course, goofy things happen. And if he doesn't catch the ball and he gets 150 yards on the ground, like one touchdown, you could survive that for sure. He would have got more last week, obviously, if if they would have if that game was even close. So Derrick Henry is an awesome play. We want some Derrick Henry. How much is he worth as far as delegating funds there, Hribar? We don't really know as far as what salary you may or may not have as far as cheapies to make it work. But ideally, in a perfect world, I assume you want yourself some Derrick Henry.
Looking pretty good. Looking like a pretty good spot. Especially with Chase. If Chase Daniel starts this game too, like how did the Lions punch back, man? Because with Stafford, or at least we could talk ourselves into it. I mean, they were hanging around with the Packers last week. So I mean, he definitely probably would have if Stafford plays. Maybe he still will, and we'll get some news that Stafford will play at the end of the week, and they'll be able to move the ball on this Titans defense like everyone pretty much has, except for Mike Glennon. Derrick Henry has a league high 201 touches on first down. The Lions are averaging 5.1 yards per carry allowed on first downs. That's 31st in the NFL. Only Houston is worse. He leads the league in yardage on carries of 10 or more yards. It's just they're allowing a league high 23 touchdowns to running backs.
What do you want?
I mean, he's really expensive, but he's expensive for a reason. I mean, and he's not hard to get to. We can talk about some of these other guys. Like there are a bunch of cheap running backs to play this week. If you want to try to jam him in, you absolutely can.
Fire off those guys. I'm curious. I imagine some of the Baltimore guys are on there, and that's going to be fun to figure it out. Like, is Dobbins the guy? He's still plenty cheap in certain spots. We saw, Gus get in the end zone twice last week. I assume Ingram's on the outside looking in along with Hill, but Baltimore could also theoretically run the ball like 45, 50 times next week. They have 5 running backs if you want to count Lamar Jackson. I don't know if Hill's going to dress or not, but talk about that situation and like any other cheapies that are sort of popping for you.
Yeah, so Dobbins out-touched Gus Edwards again last week, 13-8. The problem is that when Gus Edwards touches the ball, man, magic is happening. Both of his touchdowns were awesome runs last week on Monday night. And then the week before, he only had 7 carries against Dallas. They had 101 yards on them. Like he's like Gus Edwards. There's no reason for them not to keep giving him those kind of touches. Like, right. Like you can make an argument he deserves more the way he's played recently. So, I mean, Dobbins has the edge in snaps and touches, but Edwards is playing so well that it's been kind of a thorn in stopping the complete liftoff for Dobbins. Now, Jacksonville, the past 4 games to running backs, 224 yards, 131 yards, 206 yards, 107 rushing yards on the ground. And the 107 was the Pittsburgh, which might as well be 300 considering how Pittsburgh runs the football. Even the ghost of James Conner at 13 carries for 89 yards in that game. That's like, that might be a 200-yard game for him at this point. So there's that. None of them are going to catch the ball, though. I think they're tough because I don't think any of them have like a real high ceiling, an individual ceiling. I think they're all like just going to spread it out, have some good games. Dobbins be the leader, of course. Obviously, this Raheem Mostert news is looking pretty ominous, which means we get Jeff Wilson and Jerick McKinnon. I'm sure would probably come back and play, even though he was just like a special teamer last week. But we've seen Jeff Wilson in games with Jerick McKinnon just push him to the side though too. Jeff Wilson has 30 touches on the ground his past 3 games, splitting time with Mostert. Dallas is the league's worst run defense in EPA allowed. They've allowed 4.2 rushes of 10 or more yards per game. That's tied with Houston for the most in the league. He would be basically a dude you just auto play pretty much if Mostert's out. Ronald Jones is probably not going to play, whether it be through the finger or COVID or combination of both. I don't know if anyone wants to take the plunge at Fournette. He's cheap. Cam Akers is underpriced for the usage he's got. We did talk about the Jets defense, but we're also talking about a running back that had 31 of 33 backfield touches as a 17-point home favorite. That's typically a spot you just say, who cares about the matchup?
Yep.
I'm going to play some of that, dude. So, I mean, all those guys are underpriced as well. If you want to include the Ravens guys there as options you can get to. And that doesn't even talk about some of the fringe guys like we talked about, Kamara, Jonathan Taylor playing in that middle ground, a David Montgomery, even a Miles Sanders, all those mid-tier guys. Like, you're able to skip those and go to a lot of those cheap guys in that area.
John, any of those, let's just say hypothetically that Jones is out there for Tampa. Who do you feel like we might get some beats on this, obviously, but right now, Fournette, healthy scratch last time. McCoy, those, had fresh legs, but old fresh legs last time. Looked good in spurts. And also Keshawn Vaughn is lurking too. So maybe they might do the old three-headed monster thing. Who knows? And none of them do anything. But amongst those three, who was most appealing? And then, feel free to fire off any running backs that do anything for you. We didn't really talk about Akers, like he was mentioned in passing. I should have set him up too, because Akers feels like a really, really, really strong play this week as well. So the Tampa Bay situation, anything you want to add on as far as guys that were mentioned? Anybody else you want to throw into the conversation?
Yeah, it would be Leonard Fournette. Game script would likely get out of hand for the Bucs. Thus, I know what Bruce Arians said, like, oh, LaShawn McCoy would still play on passing downs, supposedly. I don't think it would come to that. I think it'd just be Leonard Fournette getting pounded up the middle because game script gets out of hand in favor of the Bucs. So you would play Leonard Fournette if Ronald Jones is out. On Derrick Henry, I will say, the Titans have the highest implied team total in the entire week, and it's not budging. It's not going down. So that would mean, especially if Chase Daniel's under center, it is Dehember, as we all expected. The Ravens actually are the second highest, 1 point behind the Titans. So whether you start with your lineups with Lamar Jackson and come back with Henry, or even if you want to get frisky and go J.K. Dobbins, that's fine. I totally get that. Gus Edwards, as Reeb said, also a good play. On Jeff Wilson, like Reeb said it, he's a smash play. The Bengals hadn't surpassed 200 yards of offense since Joe Burrow got injured, and they had 301 against the Cowboys. The difference is they fumbled 3 times. So the 7 point shows it. But those 7 points are like so faux because the Bengals are right there every time if they didn't cough up the ball. So the Cowboys are still one of the worst front sevens in the entire league, and Jeff Wilson will single-handedly surpass the 49ers 23.5 team total just for them. And then, Cam Akers, 17-point home favorite, past 2 games, 50 of 58 running back carries, and 100% all 11 of the team's touches inside the 10-yard line, RB touches. So, it doesn't matter about the matchup. He's a smash play. It's pretty easy.
It's a weird week where, we're getting to the point where we're trusting the Colts to say, yeah, Taylor is our guy. We're trusting the Rams to say Akers is our guy. And they've kind of flip-flopped all throughout the season, but it feels like they're more separated now than they've been the entire season. Hopefully that sustains and, fade them at your own peril. I'm in before Kyle Juszczyk gets 2 1-yard touchdowns. So I guess that's going to happen. He definitely loves to hawk those touchdowns at the goal line.
It seems like another matchup. We talked about this on Sunday morning as well, Dean. Like, just let ownership dictate it for you. When there are a bunch of good plays and a bunch of terrific spots, just see where ownership's going to go and then go from there. Rule of thumb, 115 to 125% cumulative ownership in your lineup, and just judge it from there. No big deal. There are lots of good plays. No big deal.
It's interesting. David Montgomery has had a weird season. The NFL season is so short, but it's so long. Like the people's thoughts as far as Montgomery has just been all over the place. And now I guess we love him. 3 strong games in a row. And I think if we get all this quote unquote value, people are going to go high low, and maybe he gets kind of sort of lost in the shuffle against Minnesota. And people aren't going to play Cook so much on the other side either. They're going to pay off Henry first, or pay off a guy like Hill and middle normal salary caps. So you can't pay them all. Just think it's interesting. Again, Wednesday night, who knows as far as ownership, but I feel like in my head, people aren't going to play Montgomery despite the fact he's been absolutely spectacular. And I guess that's a good segue to wide receiver because, Allen Robinson, Trubisky loves him, keeps feeding him. He probably wants Robinson to stay. I believe he's a free agent in the offseason. I can't imagine he does. We shall see. We don't care about next season. We care about this week and this week only. Rich, you tell me, are you on board with Robinson for me? The game against Minnesota probably down as well in a dome, nice secondary to pick on. And if not him, give me some other pivots as far as wide receivers.
Yeah, we always like Robinson. We know the floor is always going to be there. He's not going to brick for you. But always is like the guy I like to lean to in cash a little bit more just because the floor he has and the volatility with his quarterbacks. He's also a guy who doesn't score typically a lot of touchdowns, although he has 3. over these past 3 weeks with Trubisky coming back in the lineup. Minnesota's 31st in the league in points, PPR points allowed per game to opposing wide receiver ones, to 18.9 per game. Foles played the first game. He only had the 6 for 43, but I mean, that's all right. It's just happenstance for wide receiver. No reason, I don't think, to go back to him. Obviously, the chalkiest wide receiver, I think, of the entire slate will be Brandon Ayuk. The past 5 games that Brandon Ayuk has played, those 5 weeks, he ranks second in the among all NFL wide receivers in targets with 57, 5th among all wide receivers in catches at 36, 2nd in receiving yards, 498, 5th in target share at 30%, and 5th in weighted opportunity. You're just counting for those last 5 weeks he's played football amongst the NFL peers. He's been a top 20 scorer in all those games. He's averaged 20 and a half PPR points per game. Dallas is last in the league in yards per target allowed to opposing wide receivers, have a lot of league high, 8.9% touchdown rate to opposing wide receivers. And if you allowed a touchdown to AJ Green this season, you are automatically on the board as a target. I think that I don't think there will be a wide receiver as popular as Brandon Ayuk this week.
Yeah, and
for
Deebo
good
Samuel
reason,
out,
too.
obviously, too. What was that, John?
I said for good reason too. He deserves it.
Yeah. Is there any interest in the secondary San Francisco receivers as a punt, Bourne or James? Like, they're just super cheap. And, if you're looking for something cheap against Dallas, those guys do anything for you as darts, or it's mostly Ayuk and, the running game there with Wilson?
Not really for me personally. If it comes down to where I need to squeeze some guys in my lineup, yes. But right now in builds, I don't feel really uncomfortable. So like last week, if you would have said that Bourne in this matchup would have probably been the guy. But this week, I don't think I need him, honestly.
Who do you have at receiver? Who's on your list?
Yeah, so Ayuk, as Reeves mentioned, Calvin Ridley, I think, is still in a terrific spot. The offense just keeps crumbling around him, but Ridley's going nowhere. 4 full games that Julio, because we're throwing that week 4 Packers game where he had a banged up ankle when he didn't catch a ball out the door. And Ridley in those 4 games is a 31% target share and has taken in 52% of the Falcons' air yards. So just keeps sustaining, keeps on going despite what happens around him. Justin Jefferson, a terrific bounce back. You mentioned you like the game. I like the game, Dean, as well. Like, why aren't we going back to Justin Jefferson, who now in the past 2 games is kind of separated from Adam Thielen? Ran around on 92% of Kirk Cousins' dropbacks last week, had a team high target share, and the box score against the Bears last week would have been different had Jordan Akins not, quote unquote, lost the ball in the sun, because they had allowed 41 and 34 points the past 2 weeks before they ran to the Texans, and Deshaun Watson still completed 70% of his passes against them. So being banged up right now, I just don't think they're that hardcore of a matchup. And then this one's really scary, I know, but Terry McLaurin got a team-high 25% target share from Dwayne Haskins last year. And Seattle is just like covering themselves in perfume of wretched quarterback play. Jared Goff, Kyler Murray, who got injured when he played them, Carson Wentz, Colt McCoy, and Sam Darnold the past 5 games. I don't think Seattle's defense has gotten better. I just think they haven't played anybody. And Dwayne Haskins, don't get me wrong, is nobody. But we at least know he's going to throw the ball towards McLaurin. So for tournaments only, I don't think it's that bad of a play.
You're rooting for, if you're rostering McLaurin, you're rooting for it to be Haskins and not Alex Smith. That's the weird predicament you're in. Is that what you're saying? If you're picking one of the two?
Yeah, but oddly enough, though, and again, Dwayne Haskins, we know, is not the best. McLaurin, despite leading the team in target share, still had, I believe, only 8.3 fantasy points per game because the balls just didn't get there. But it's a very bad Seattle secondary still in my mind because of their matchups that are hiding or masking what they're actually doing. And yeah, he's going to get the ball and he's going to at least get targeted. So no one's going to play him how bad he's been, according to fantasy production the past month. So yeah, I think it's a good tournament play.
I mean, I'm never one to root for injury, but I thought it'd be fun to see emergency quarterback Logan Thomas take over. You don't want to see that?
Maybe, yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't realize it was Logan Thomas. In that case, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good times. I'm not saying it'd be super efficient; it'd just be entertaining. I don't remember him being that big at Fatech. Was there a different? That's the guy. That's the same guy. You guys, is that the same person? I think so.
I mean, he's a little bigger now because he transitioned, but he was always a big dude. Leftwich. He was always built like Leftwich in a way, and then just transitioned.
In his bowl game at Voltech, Rich, didn't he get benched as a quarterback?
Oh God, man, I can't remember.
I thought he
was awful though.
Yeah, I thought he went 7 of 17, and they sent him to the bench in the first half. He was bad.
He was an awful quarterback. He transitioned quick. He did get a couple starts in Arizona. I think a call at one point, and then he immediately changed to tight end when he went to Buffalo.
You guys mentioned Leftwich. He was one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch there at Marshall. And one of the greatest drives, his offensive lineman had to carry him the entire drive. Google
that's
that
one of those
kids.
sports images it's one of those like sports images that you'll always have in your mind.
Truly amazing. My favorite quarterback to watch was Jared Lorenzen. He was just an absolute pleasure.
R.I.P. Lorenzen.
Oh man, I didn't watch the Arena League games, but I watched them. We played for Kentucky, and just got it was just a blast watching the play. I don't know why I'm getting nostalgic. We're already over time for whatever reason. Let's move on. Is there any receivers that are worth? There's a bunch you could throw out there, obviously. Anybody else pop them for you, the Hribar, or shall we talk about the tight ends? So we already talked about Travis Kelce and
Atkins. That's
fine.
We can roll into. We'll roll into some tight ends.
What do you have for me?
I mean, Mandrews. Just play Mandrews.
Yeah.
His past 3 games, he missed the 2 games of COVID, but his last 3 games on the field, he actually has been productive. 7 for 61, 596 and 1, 5 for 78. Jacksonville, 31st in yards allowed per target to tight ends. If whatever happens to these wide receivers, who cares? They're like, he's still the number 1 probably pass catcher in that offense. If we like Lamar, we got to like Mandrews. And Daigle talked about Irv Smith, but the one thing I will say about Irv Smith is today, he practiced in full for the first time since week 9 to kind of give him some merit. Because last week he only played 35% of snaps. He only ran a pass route on 36% of dropbacks, but it was his first full practice today since week 9.
Yeah, and they said going to the game last week, there was a report, maybe it was Rappaport, I don't remember who it was, but somebody said that he'll be kind of eased in and he's only going to be on, so many snaps. Of course, he got there, and that's all that matters, the DFS guys. But I'd imagine he would grab more snaps this week under the presumption that Rudolph is still out, which I don't know. Is he officially out or still questionable? It's Wednesday night. We're not sure. Finish strong, Daigle. What else do you have for us as far as tight ends, or if you want to sprinkle another receiver, by all means. I'll just throw this out there. Interesting, like leverage move. We talked about how much we love Henry. Of course, you're gonna hear that all week. Everybody loves Henry, but Brown and Davis are gonna be mostly ignored. And why can't they shred that defense up as well? And that could be how they get their first 3 or 4 touchdowns via the air. So if you want to live dangerously, and that's not even that dangerous, it's perfectly fine to play Brown or Davis and just fade Henry, and hopefully he doesn't get the touchdowns. What do you have?
One interesting Davis note. So since Davis has come back from injury, the Titans have won 4 games. And in those 4 games, Corey Davis has 3 targets, 7 targets, 3 targets, and 3 targets. In the wins. He's been getting it all in these games that go the pop back games. That's when he's kind of had his production outside of that one hit. But you look at like the Bengals game is when he hit. They're chasing points. All these big games are kind of coming when they are getting their pass volume. When they have these low condensed volume games, the target share is still going to AJ Brown when the targets are condensed like last week. It's just an interesting thing. And it's just a 4-game sample, so it could be nothing, but it is interesting because we know that if they do end up throwing like 25 passes, which is in the range of outcomes, that in those 4 wins, he has 3 or fewer targets in 3 of them.
I was going to go the opposite way, and I was going to get mad at Dean because I thought since we were on tight ends, he was going to sell me on Jonnu Smith as leverage. It's like, no, Jonnu Smith is never the leverage, so do not tell me to play him.
Cole Kmet's still my guy, and he was a touchdown drop away from having a big week, and I still think he's like way too cheap. And again, I like him on the Chicago side. I keep playing him. I think he's clearly the future there. And I know Graham scored a touchdown last week, which, come on, what are we doing here in Chicago? Let's turn it over to Kmet. It's Kmet's season. 3K on DK on a comeback there against Minnesota on a run back.
7 targets, back-to-back games as well. No, Kmet's my cheap play, like especially if you see ownership go to Irv Smith. I think Kmet's a great pivot at 3K. He's great. Having said that, I mean, if you want to close it, no like dumb Drew samples, nothing here. I just think we already gave you the core. We already said the Ravens had the 2nd highest implied team total. We said the Titans had the highest. So we gave you the core of Derrick Henry. You go Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews because that's leverage off Travis Kelce as well. And that also gets you on Travis Kelce. We give you a 4-man core for tournaments. Go out there and play it. That's it. Close it.
Yeah, I thought we can get Shaheen for 2.5 for Miami, but he's 3.3. Like, how does that happen?
More than Kmet. More than a guy that had 7 targets. More than a guy that had 7 targets the past 2 weeks.
Shaheen is the Drew sample of week 15. We can just move on.
It's probably not necessary, but I just thought, maybe a 2.5 guy. But I'm assuming Gesicki's going to be out for a while. It didn't look very good. I think they already ruled him out, to be honest.
How many total points over under are scored in that Patriots-Dolphins game?
Oh, it's going to be a bad game.
There's no way it's hitting that. What is it at right now? There's no way I believe
it's got to be under 40, right?
If it starts with a 4, I don't believe it.
I think it's 40, at least according to the Rotogrinders page. Let me refresh.
41 and a half right now. It opened
under.
at 43 and a half, and it's been bet down to 41 and a half. There's no way those two teams combined for 40 points.
No way. I agree.
Groupie defensive play, possibly, but yeah, there's got to be a couple of those, I suppose.
I mean, no Parker, no potential Parker, no Gesicki. Like they're going to be running an offense through Adam Shaheen, Lynn Bowden, like their lead slot receiver. Myles Gaskin still won't be back because he's not eligible. Like,
right.
What about the return of Mac Collins?
Yeah. Sure.
I
mean, those guys are going to get played. Bowden and Hollins are going to get played because they're so cheap on DK.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Bowden. Bowden will definitely be played.
Mm-hmm.
But man, like it's not a great matchup either for wide receivers against the Patriots. But like you said, that any of the targets will go there, and at 3-5, who cares?
Bowden, the difference is like they even put him under center at quarterback twice last week. Like,
he tried to throw 2 passes.
Yeah, Bowden has the pass attempts, literally just attempts, and then rushing equity as well. Like at least he's going to do that. Mac Hollins isn't going to do anything else but run routes in the boundary. So like Bowden will be the play clearly if you have to go that route.
Who's scoring touchdowns in that game?
No one.
Like that?
And Kill Harry was the best player for the Patriots last week. That tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, I saw Edelman was practicing. I don't know if he's going to be back or
not this week.
Okay, and also
same with Kittle. So same with Kittle. Kittle's not
right.
playing this week either.
All right, we're supposed to finish strong. We're talking about the Dolphins and the Patriots, sticking with the tradition of the show. Hribar, tell the people where they can find you. Week 15. Like if you don't know where Hribar is, around the DFS space, around the NFL fantasy football space, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why you're here.
Well, they just don't care at this point.
Yeah, they're just here for Daigle, maybe. I don't know.
Definitely.
Tell them where to find you.
Sharpfootballanalysis.com, putting a bow in this season. 2 more weeks in the books. Sharp Angles podcast, Dan Pizzuta, Cleve TA. And then every Wednesday night, pick 6, Daigle and Dean. I don't have a D name, but I'm with these guys.
Double D's. Close this out here, Daigle. Tell the people where they can find you.
Rotoworld.com, Rotoworld Football Podcast, at NotJDaigle on Twitter, and then immediately after this, just this one Wednesday night, on the ground cleaning up popcorn. Back to you, Dean.
He was John Daigle. He was Rich Hribar. I was Dean. This was the NFL Pick 6 show. Good luck in Week 15. We're out of here. Holler.